Alright, Haslet or Haslet. What is Haslet? Well, it's a kind of a meatloaf really, but it's one which is generally chilled and then sliced, and then we put it into our sandwiches. So anyway, enough talking about it, let's get on and make some. I've got a couple of crusts of dry bread. You want about that much dry bread, and I'm just going to break that up and throw that into my food processor. And the other things I've got a whole brown onion, which is going in there as well. I have got 750 grams of beef and pork mince. So this is I believe it's a 50-50 mince of beef and pork. It's got quite a nice fat content, which is needed for a dish like this. I've also got some salt and pepper to the side. I've got some thyme, which goes well with the beef element, and I've got some sage, which goes well with the pork element. Now traditionally this was probably made only with minced pork, but I can get this lovely beef and pork mince, which is particularly good for this kind of meatloaf. So right, the next thing I want to do is get in some sage. So I'm going to want about a bit more, a generous teaspoon, maybe 2 teaspoons of sage. That's dried sage. If you're going to use fresh sage, you need twice that amount. And thyme, a little less thyme, just about 3/4 of a teaspoon. That's going in there. So we've got sage in there, we've got thyme in there. Now I need some salt, and you're going to need a couple of teaspoons of salt. You're going to need some pepper. Let's get this up and over here. I like lots of pepper. You put in as much as you like. And optionally you can put in some chili flakes. Now I don't use a lot of these, just a little pinch. But if you don't like chili, just leave it out. I just like it because it pimps up the flavour just a little bit. I don't use much. What's that? About half a teaspoon at the most, 1/4 of a teaspoon. And then what I want to do is I want to get that blitzed up now and turned into breadcrumbs before I put in the onion. So at this point it's just like making a stuffing really. Let's put that over there for now. And let's get this onion cut up. So I want it chopped up roughly, just so it blitzes up nicely in the food processor. I'll go and give that a blitz. So what we end up with is something that looks for all the world like stuffing, because it is. Right, I want to get a bowl. Into the bowl I want to get my meat. Onto the meat I want to get all my bread stuff in. Once you've got all that in there, the next thing to do is get it all mixed in. And the better you mix it at this point, the better it will be. I happen to know that this recipe works, but what you can do is you can take a pinch of it. Now because it's got pork in it, you can't eat it straight away. You can microwave that and then have a taste of it to see how you're doing. And that will give you an idea of how your Haslet is going to turn out. Okay, looking at the texture of that, it looks pretty good to me. Pretty well mixed in. There's no egg in this recipe. There's no need for egg in this recipe. So what I'm going to do now is work it into a sort of a a lozenge shape, and then I'm going to get my greased loaf tin, which has been greased with some lard, and throw that in there and make sure it's pushed out into the corners here, so that you get right into the corners of your loaf tin. Now spend a bit of time doing this right, get it into the corners, and then we can dress the top. I use these little butter, these wooden butter knives, which I find really useful. I think there might be a link to these in my Amazon influencer links in the description of this video, because I find these so useful. Right, so you can put any sort of pattern on it you like, really, it's up to you, but I like to do that. And then what I want to do with that is just cover that initially with some foil. Okay, so we've got that covered in foil, and I'm going to sit that inside a baking tray just to catch any spillage that might come up and out. It's not likely, but it could happen. And then I'm going to bake that for 1 hour, and then I'm going to lift off the foil and then bake it for another few minutes until it browns up the crust. So 180 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 hour. Alright. I'm not really concerned that it's cooked through because I know it is, but you'll see there's some shrinkage there. And what I like to do with that is I like to pour off that fat, or some of it, into there, because that's really good grease to use for other cooking processes, and extremely tasty. So give me a second while I do that. I'll leave a little in the bottom there because I don't want it to dry out too much as I bake the rest of this off. So that's the top off it, and then I just need to bake that, put a crust on it, 10 to 15 minutes back in the oven. And that is my little jar of stock and grease. The grease floats on the top and the stock will be on the bottom, so that will turn to some sort of jelly with the grease floating on top of it. So I'll be able to use that, so I'll give that a cover. I'll reuse some of this foil and cover that and put that to one side. Alright, that's given it another 15 minutes. So you can take it to a darker crust if you like, but that's perfectly okay for me. And I'm going to let that cool down now in the loaf tin and see if it absorbs some more of that moisture, which will make it nicer when we slice it up. So I'll just let that cool down a little bit, and then we'll take it out and put it on a cooling rack. So here we go, about 10-15 minutes later, it's absorbed some of the liquid from that, and of course it's cooled down enough for me to handle. So I'm just going to transfer that now to a wire rack and allow that to cool. Alright, so I've poured off what I could of the rest of the liquid in the baking tin, and I'm just going to now cover that and transfer it to the window ledge to cool off. And then now it's just a matter of time while our Haslet loaf cools off, and then we need to chill it. So I'll let that cool off now for another hour or so, and then I'll wrap that in greaseproof paper and then chill that in the fridge. So that's cooled off quite a lot now. I'm going to just wrap it up in some greaseproof paper. and then I'll just sit that on a plate in my fridge and let that cool off completely, so because I want this chilled before I start slicing it. Alright, I've had a bit of a sample of the meatloaf, which you see looks rather impressive, and it's nice and solid, so that will carve up really well. First thing I want to do though is I want to take this nice bloomer I've got and cut that up. So it's a tiger bloomer, what we call a tiger bloomer, and I think with this one I'm just going to make a big fat sandwich by going down it like that. And going down it that way. So we've ended up with this rather nice sandwich. Right, let's get some meat chopped up, and I'll take a few slices. I like it sliced quite thin, this, and it'll slice lovely. Look there, it's quite thin. It perhaps doesn't slice quite as well as the stuff you buy from the shop, and that's, well, because they slice it for you, for one thing, and the other is that I don't use quite as much bread in the filling, so I don't use as much rusk filling, so it is a little more, mine is a little more brittle, but then it's a lot more meaty, so that's how I like it, that's how I enjoy it. Let me put that to one side, and let's get some butter on this. So let's spread on some butter. Don't need to go too crazy with the butter, and if you don't like butter with your beef, then just use mayonnaise. And some mustard. I particularly like this with the English mustard, and I like mine quite pronounced in flavour with mustard, so let's put that in there, and let's layer some nice pieces of Haslet along it to make a nice sandwich. I think that's going to be plenty. I'm just going to put on a couple of slices of tomato and a little bit of salt, because it is beef as well as pork, so a little bit of salt just to pimp it up a little bit, and pepper, because I put pepper on everything, so just a little of that, not too much, and a couple of lettuce leaves, and I think we'll be good to go on that. This is nice, there's little gem or sweetheart lettuce. And I'll put the lid on that and have a look what that looks like. That looks pretty impressive, doesn't it? Very nice indeed. Can't see the tomato in it there, but it is there, I assure you, boys and girls. There we go. Delicious. I think my brother will rather enjoy that. I'll take that to him.
Hey friends, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you would like to follow my channel, please subscribe. And don't forget to click the bell icon and select all to receive notifications for all my future videos. It would be great to hear from you in the comments, and I'll try to get back to as many of you as possible. You may wish to check out these titles or even help me out with a donation using the links in the description below the video. Thanks for watching.